Hello, everyone, and welcome to Curious Potential, the show where we explore the untapped capacities of the human mind and spirit. I'm your host, Sophie. Today, we are diving into one of the most challenging yet profoundly liberating human experiences: the power of forgiveness. For many of us, the past isn't just a memory, it's a weight. We carry these invisible burdens, grudges that linger, regrets that haunt us, and a simmering resentment that quietly affects everything from the quality of our sleep and our physical health to the depth of our current relationships. It feels like a heavy coat we just can't seem to take off. But before we go further, we have to ask, what is forgiveness, really? There is a common misconception that forgiving someone means excusing their bad behavior or pretending that the harm never occurred. Let me be clear. It isn't about forgetting or condoning what happened. Instead, forgiveness is a conscious, intentional decision to release the grip of anger and bitterness. It is the act of untying yourself from the pain. Today, we explore the idea that letting go is not a gift you give to the person who hurt you. It is, in fact, a gift of freedom and peace that you give to yourself. Let's get into it. Now, before we can dive into the how of letting go, we have to get honest about what we are actually holding on to. We're talking about resentment. You've probably heard the famous saying that resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It's a brutal metaphor, but it hits the nail on the head. We think our anger is a weapon we're using against someone else, but in reality, we're the only ones tasting the bitterness. But why do we do it? Why does the mind cling to these jagged memories? Well, from a psychological perspective, resentment actually starts as a protective mechanism. It's your brain's way of staying alert to danger, marking a person or a situation as unsafe, so you don't get hurt the same way twice. The problem is that while a temporary alarm is helpful, chronic resentment is a different beast entirely. When we stay in that state, it triggers a sustained stress response in the body. We aren't just upset. We are chemically altering our physiology. Your system starts pumping out high levels of cortisol and adrenaline. In short bursts, those are great for running away from a predator, but when they flow through your veins for months or years, that leads to real physical wear and tear. We're talking about hypertension, a significantly weakened immune system, and a constant, humming baseline of anxiety. Your body essentially forgets how to feel safe because it's too busy guarding against a ghost from the past. This leads us to what I call the resentment loop. This is the cognitive trap where we replay the trauma or the unfairness over and over in our minds. We tell ourselves we're processing it, but often we're just reinforcing the neural pathways of anger. Every time you relive that argument or that betrayal, you're essentially carving a deeper groove in your brain. Eventually, this pathway becomes so well-traveled that anger becomes your default emotional state. You don't even need a trigger anymore. Your brain has simply learned that resentment is the path of least resistance. To break the loop, we first have to recognize that the path we've built is no longer serving us. Alright, so we've established why forgiveness is so powerful for our own well-being, but now we get to the how. Because let's be honest, saying just forgive them is much easier than actually doing it. So how do we actually practice the mechanics of forgiving others? It doesn't happen overnight, and it's not a light switch you just flip. It begins with a fundamental shift in perspective. Research points us towards something called empathetic understanding. Now, I want to be very clear here. Empathetic understanding is not the same as justifying or excusing someone's bad behavior. It's not about saying it was okay that they hurt me. Instead, it's about trying to see the broader context of the other person's actions. Maybe they were acting out of their own trauma or ignorance or a broken mental state. When we look at the why without accepting the what, it can actually lower the emotional charge of that painful memory. Once we've shifted that perspective, we move into the active process of letting go. This starts with acknowledging the pain, really feeling it, and admitting that it happened. From there, we have to make a conscious, logical decision. We have to look at the anger we're carrying and realize that the cost of holding on to it is simply too high. Anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. It drains our energy and clouds our joy. So the next step is consciously releasing the desire for revenge. It's the act of saying, I no longer need you to suffer for me to be okay. Now, there is one huge misconception I want to clear up before we move on. A lot of people avoid forgiveness because they think it means they have to let the person back into their life. But here is the golden rule of forgiveness. Forgiveness does not require reconciliation. You can absolutely forgive someone to find your own inner peace while still maintaining a firm boundary that keeps you safe from them. You can wish them well from a very, very long distance. Now we've talked about how to handle conflict with others, but there's a much tougher challenge we often overlook. In my experience, the most rigid, unrelenting judge we ever encounter isn't a boss, a parent, or a partner, it's the one staring back at us in the mirror. I'm talking about the internal battle for self-forgiveness. It's that heavy, lingering feeling when you can't seem to let go of a mistake from 5, 10, or even 20 years ago. To start unpacking this, we first need to get clear on our vocabulary because there is a massive psychological difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is the voice that says, I did something bad. It's focused on the action. Shame, however, is far more insidious. Shame is the voice that tells you, I am bad. While guilt can be a helpful signal that we've deviated from our values, shame is just a weight that keeps us stuck. So how do we actually move forward? The secret ingredient is self-compassion. I know that sounds like a buzzword, but in practice, it's a powerful cognitive shift. It involves recognizing a fundamental truth. The person you were when you made that mistake is not the person you are today. You had different tools, different levels of maturity, and perhaps a very different set of circumstances. When we stop punishing our current selves for the failures of our past selves, we create space to breathe. But let's be clear, self-forgiveness isn't about erasing the past or pretending it didn't happen. It's about accepting accountability. When we make amends where possible and take ownership of our actions, we can actually transform that guilt. Instead of it being an anchor that chains us to our worst moments, it becomes a catalyst for growth, pushing us to be better, kinder, and more conscious humans today. Now let's talk about the emotional dividends. Because when we actually manage to integrate forgiveness into our daily lives, the payoff isn't just a vague feeling of peace, it's a measurable shift in our well-being. In the field of positive psychology, researchers have found a direct, powerful correlation between a forgiving nature and lower rates of depression and other depression-related disorders. It turns out that holding onto a grudge is like carrying a heavy backpack everywhere you go. It exhausts you physically and mentally. When we let that go, we aren't just being nice to the other person, we are fundamentally changing our own internal chemistry. Think of it as clearing out the emotional clutter. Resentment is like a layer of dust that settles over everything, dulling the colors of our life. By clearing that clutter, we suddenly create this beautiful, open space for things that actually matter. Gratitude, joy, and a much deeper level of intimacy with the people we love. It's a transition from a state of victimhood, where we are defined by what was done to us, to a state of agency. This is the most empowering part of the whole process. It means your happiness is no longer contingent on an apology you may never receive. You take the keys to your own emotional freedom back. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with one final, vital thought. Please remember that forgiveness is a journey, not a light switch. It isn't something that happens instantaneously where you simply flip a switch and suddenly everything is okay. Instead, it is a practice. It is a conscious choice that you may have to make every single morning, over and over again, until the weight of that burden finally begins to lift. Whether your path to healing looks like writing a letter you never actually send, engaging in a meditation on compassion, or simply having a quiet, honest conversation with yourself in the mirror, the most important part is the beginning. The first step is simply deciding, truly deciding, that you deserve peace. Thank you so much for joining us on Curious Potential as we explored the transformative power of forgiveness. Be kind to yourselves, and we will see you in the next episode.